And hey, Wendy, we're live in the pre-show. How about that?
Hello.
Hello. And I think you're looking mighty devilish today.
Well, if it was good enough for Sam Smith, it's good enough for me.
Totally different kinds of devilishness. I have to admit. So let's see when we start getting some people pouring in. We got a few people in. And we've got folks at 3 minutes after the top of the hour. We go live. And so you're just seeing the pre-show. The pre-show in all its glory, where it's nothing to shake a stick at yet. And Wendy is something to shake a stick at.
Well, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Oh, behave.
I'm sorry, but I make no apologies. So, let's see. So, hey, Romeldian, good to see you. Nice to see you over there in the chat room. We've already lost somebody in the chat room. How about that? So,
Have you really? Maybe it was my horns.
It might be. Maybe it was my horns. Oh, that's Scotty. He just can't settle down.
Behave yourself.
Oh, behave. Well, we're down to one person. It's Romeldian.
Yeah. That's okay. It'll grow.
It'll load up.
It'll load.
And we are close to the beginning of the show.
Making sure that all the buttons are pressed and all the knobs are on.
Let's go dark, and I'll call you back in. Well, good afternoon, good day, and good evening to everybody out there listening and watching us tonight. I'm Scotty Roberts, and that over there is my counterpart, Wendy Robertson, making up the team, of course. Robertson, welcome to the program today, folks. And it is Tuesday afternoon. We are live. It's 4 p.m. in the Central America, United States. Central America. That's a place all by itself. Central United States. And Wendy is live over in London, England.
Yes.
So,
5:10. Yep.
Yes, she says quite, yes. And so I'm glad you're with us today. I love your outfit.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's stunning. It's pointed. It is appealing and all of those grand, glorious things. So I just want to extend a personal thank you.
Well, I'm channeling my inner demon and my inner Sam Smith. So yes.
You have an inner demon?
Apparently.
Apparently so. So it's appropriate, though, because of what we're going to talk about today. And we had called this particular program Unholy Hollywood. And it was really pointed on a piece of entertainment news, an event that took place in entertainment. But we're going to go far beyond the realms of just entertainment news on this. And this is, Wendy and I have been discussing this on and off all day. We were going to do something different for today. And she called this morning. She says, you know what? I think we should talk about this. And so, sorry about that, folks. I got a fire alarm going off upstairs. I don't know if you hear that.
You need to check it?
Don't know. I don't. There are 6 kids upstairs. So somebody must have burned something in the oven. So they'd be rushing down the stairs, screaming. So there you go. Yes, Rainey is out of town. I have my 3 kids. They brought 3 kids home with them today. So my house is full of children. Talk about evil brewing. But this program, I think we're going to take something that happened Hollywood, something that happened at the Grammys, and we're going to talk about this a little bit and its far-reaching tendrils. Folks, we've become, and Wendy, I'm going to say this to you too. We were just talking about this a few minutes ago, is that the tendrils of this are things that we are either going to sedate ourselves to the negative side of all of this and say, well, we got to be accepting, you have to be, you can't cancel culture. We can't be if we're offended, we're the buffoons. And frankly, I'll tell you this, I'm not offended by what we're going to be talking about at all, in the least. I just think, in my opinion, it's stupidity. And it's stupidity that we allow to run rampant. Because if you don't draw the lines in a society somewhere, or if the lines keep getting pushed back, or if the barricades keep getting torn down, is that a good thing? Sometimes it might be. Is it a bad thing? Sometimes it might be. I look at you today, absolutely stunning and beautiful, but the way you are dressed, you couldn't have done that 50 years ago on radio.
Yeah.
So have we stretched those boundaries? Are there things that we do today, the things we talk about? If I talk about, well, we can't say things like the N-word, even in public discourse about the N-word. Is this a proper thing to say? Should it appear in books? Should we ban books that have it? We've had books banned. We've had Mark Twain, who wrote books like Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. His books banned in school libraries because he uses the N-word. But he wrote it over 130 years ago. So here's the question then that all this presents. We have these certain, what would you call them? Goalposts in our society. It's not really a goal. We have these certain markers along the way. We say, not this line, advance no further than this. And we gradually tear that down and move on. And years later, we look back at that first marker and we go, wow, they actually didn't allow you to look at an ankle back then, did they? But now it's totally different. So it's a gradualism. It is this topic, and you can start breaking in wherever you want, because I could just go on pontificating about this, but
Well,
we have torn down
yeah.
certain things that were fences that we put up for moral safety, for the safety of our kids, for the whatever, but they keep getting pushed down, and we keep finding that they're being allowed to happen. So give me your take on this so far.
Well, one of the reasons why when I spoke to you today is that I watched some of the Grammys the other night, and
yes,
we have the Brits, and you guys I think have the Grammys, and I was absolutely amazed by the Sam Smith song and
his performance,
and also with Madonna's, may I say, her face before she when she introduced them, and it made me realize that Sam Smith's come a long way, because when he first started out, he was a guy who thought he was straight, and then he became gay, and now he's non-binary, and he's really changed. And his music is wonderful, but he's very, very changed. And he's just got a song that recently has come out called "I'm Not Here to Make Friends." And if you see that video on YouTube, it's quite eye-opening, jaw-dropping. I remember in 1980, 82. Around that time, when Frankie Goes to Hollywood let out "Relax," the song "Relax," don't do it when you're gonna go to it, or something like that. And they banned it. They banned the video and everything like that. How?
What was the rest of that sentence? Relax, don't do it
when you want to come to it.
When you want to come. Yeah, I mean, that's stuff you went. Did he actually just say that on radio?
He did, right? And literally. look how far we come. So I was watching this and I saw it was the most amazing routine. But as it was going on, I was aware, as I would be with some of my background, that there were rituals being used in that
Yes.
routine. And obviously, when you see somebody do this in any shape or form, that is, you'll see a lot of people do this sign on their record cover.
Well, it's white supremacy, right? No, that's what it's become over here.
It's something to do with the 666, right? And
Oh,
obviously
right.
when they cover their eyes as well, like one of this or that, it's supposed to be allegiance to the dark side. But I was taken back by it because I thought, wow. First of all, I mean, he's a gay guy, or actually, I should say, I'm not even sure what actually Sam Smith is, and I'm sure
I don't even care what's proper anymore because you can't keep up.
And he actually has, I think his surname is Kim. She's, forgive me, I don't know her, I can't remember her surname, but she is the first trans woman to win an award.
Oh, yes.
And she has an amazing voice. She looked amazing, but they were all dressed in red and with the horns, which is hence why I had put mine on. And it was all very demonic, satanic. Now, I have to admit, I'm not averse to a bit of the dark side. We've all been drawn to the devil in certain ways. And Halloween, the horns come out and people like the little devil outfits and all that kind of stuff. But it did make me question the darker side of Hollywood, that there it was in plain sight,
Yes.
And it was like they were, it's a religion, Satanism is a religion, Christianity is a religion, but it seems to be that it's very easy to take the mickey out of Christianity than it is any other religion, because as you and I were talking earlier on, if they had done that out of Islam, there would have been, pardon the pun, hell to pay.
Right.
But it's okay to do that. So I think they pushed the boundaries. And that's when we got talking about dark, deep state Hollywood. How deep and dark does it really go? Have these Hollywood artists, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Katy Perry, and other such like, have they given themselves over to the dark side? Hollywood's work, as one of your lovely people said, Susie said, Hollywood. It does make you wonder, but it's also very, you can't stop watching it. It's actually riveting to watch. It's like, wow, like it blew me away. And the song stays in your head. They were singing the songs to Unholy, which is the song that he did, Sam and Kim Petras did. And obviously some of the lyrics says, Mummy don't know Daddy's getting hot at the body shop, doing something unholy. And then as you go down the song, it says, Daddy, Daddy, if you want it, drop the addy. Give me love, give me Fendi, my Balencia Daddy. And that was quite interesting because they mentioned the name Balencia. And that's
which means, sorry, I'm not going to jump your gun there, but if you were saving it,
oh my
ignore
God.
me.
You want to say it? Go on, you say it.
No, you got it right there.
It means do what thou wilt.
Do what thou wilt.
Which apparently Balencia is Latin. And a lot of people say that do what thou wilt is used in satanic verse. And Balencia is basically called their company after that saying. And of course, everyone, I think, probably saw in the news recently, Balencia, the teddy bears that were dressed in S&M and bondage and stuff. Now, not being funny, but if they went to Ann Summers over here or anywhere else and sold bondage teddies, I'm sure they, us adults would love it. We'd think it was great. Sure. But they actually had children advertising them. And one particularly disturbed me. And there's a little girl, and she's actually got, I think I'm just bringing it up here, a purple teddy bear, and her legs are actually out, but pulled out.
Mm-hmm,
And then when you go along and you look at all the other pictures, you'll see that there's signs all along in all the pictures of like demonic or pedophilia or something there. And you just think to yourself, wow. And so that's, that song that was on the Grammys mentions the name Valencia, and then it goes.
Keep talking. I'm sorry. Forgot to turn off my ringer.
I'm going to have to come over there and sort you out.
Yes.
Literally, now you realize is that we've gone from that song to mentioning, I mean, why would you mention a company which has been really, given a bad reputation for having children in a campaign with, sado... I can never say that word.
Sadomasochism.
That's the one. So yes, they dropped the ad, but the damage was still done. So that was just something when I spoke to you about, we need to look at deep dive Hollywood and how far this actually goes.
Yes. And I think for me, as I mentioned to you earlier today, I don't care what anybody wants to do in the privacy of their own space. But when you start publicizing that, you start broadcasting that to a very broad audience. There are things I could say on this show and do on this show that would end my show. Because there are standards out there. There are certain standards we have not been able to breach yet. That's probably a bad way to put that. It makes it sound like I'm looking to breach them. But there are things you can breach on this format here on YouTube. There are so many strictures to what you can and cannot say, which is really inviolate of constitutional rights over here. The same company, by the way, that created YouTube on the backs of having their constitutional freedoms to do so, are denying those same freedoms to their users because it doesn't follow their agenda or their narrative. So there are rules you can't. I had certain episodes of mine taken down because somebody called in or somebody made a comment about the state of the last presidential election. And they told me that I was violating their standard of community practice here on YouTube because I talked about the election. I wrote him back and said, I didn't talk about it. Somebody else did. And I commented on it. We moved on. Now, I bring all that up just simply to say there are still certain things. Those are pretty weak, lame standards that they have. It's an agenda-driven standard as opposed to it being inviolate of people's sensibilities or people's morals or whatever. If I posted nudity on this channel, my channel would be yanked faster than you can say Bob's your uncle. And but if you so we do my whole point with that is we do have standards out there, whether we agree with them or not. There are standards by which these sites operate and entertainment operates. You can't, in the United States, you can't show full frontal nudity on television. You can see a buttocks every now and then, or a little side boob, as we affectionately refer to it, every now and then in late night TV. But that's it. But so there are certainly standards that exist, whether we agree with them or not, whether it's company made or societally made or culturally made or governmentally made, there are standards out there. However, when you start violating those and pushing the boundaries of those, what are you doing? When you go out and you say, I am going to offend just one religion.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I connect this all for you the way it's working in my mind. There are standards we can't violate, even dumb standards, but those are standards that have been allowed on public television now, worldwide. That's a standard that violates other people's values. So if there are things that are said on YouTube, on Facebook, on our social medias, on television, that are rules that are there to prevent you from violating other people's feelings or offending somebody, Oh, good God, you can't offend anybody. If those standards are in place and you can be canceled or you can have your material pulled from public view, why was that not applied to the Grammys, where somebody was performing something that he has every right to do? I don't care what he does. I don't listen to his music. I don't care about it on that part either. But there are standards of violating other people's values. Some people look like, oh, come on, Scotty. He was just wearing no different than Wendy here. He was just wearing a different costume.
It was a lot different.
It was a lot different.
If you watch it, there's so many rituals, not just the eye, but there was so many other
yes
thing in there. And also the thing is, the truth is, Hollywood television, we love a bit of the dark side. We love a bit of it. We love the mystery, the fear of it. It's all. You can't have a baddie without a goodie. You can't have dark without light. And so we're all drawn by the light, and let's be honest. I mean, we'll come to the other one in a minute, but we're all drawn to it. It's like temptation. We're all drawn to it. And if you look at some of the Disney movies, if you go into some of in some of the films now, like the demonic side, for instance, let's look at Supernatural. I absolutely love Supernatural. I got the car, right? And the thing is, it's full of the paranormal. It's full of the dark side as well as the good side. And then they use the devil. They always use the devil, as in the horns. But that's the next question that you and I were talking about is, are Lucifer and Satan the same people?
Yes, that's a question that came up as we were talking about these things. Yeah. So if he's playing a little devil, I had just yesterday, I had some...
Oh, Dad, what can I say?
Sorry. But just yesterday I had some deviled ham, and there's the little devil on it. Little cartoony devil, or silhouette-y cartoony devil. And icon, that's a better word for it. So, am I offended by that? No. I don't care. I do... There's something, I'm going to jump ahead here and say there's this quote I mentioned to you today. It was from the now old movie, The Usual Suspects, with Kevin Spacey, pre-scandal-ridden Kevin Spacey. And where he said, the devil's greatest achievement was in convincing people that he no longer exists. Or his greatest deception. I can't remember the exact line. And I think what we have here is the devil something that is pan-cultural, that every culture has a devil or a Satan or a Lucifer or something like that. Not all of them do. And even in Judaism, early Judaism in the Old Testament, they didn't have a Satan, but he was referred to 1,000 years after certain things were written in the Old Testament. When Moses penned the first book of the Bible, he talked about the serpent in the garden. He didn't call him Lucifer. He didn't call him Satan. He didn't call him the devil. He called him by a Hebrew word, Nakash, which meant bright shining one, illuminator, bringer of knowledge, things like that. Those were the words that were given to the serpent character in the Bible. But 1,000 years later, around the 400s, when they rewrote the Old Testament, the Septuagint, they were talking about Satan being that old serpent, Satan, that old serpent in the garden, said one of the prophets. And so he changed over the millennia. And so the big question is that you and I started asking, because it's a natural progression of the conversation we were having. When Sam Smith does his little fat devil suit thing, who cares? I don't care. If you're comfortable doing that, dude, more power to you. I wouldn't put that on and prance around in public myself. But then again, I'm not getting paid millions of dollars. You paid me $1 million, I might.
Yeah.
But I think Sam Smith Is he, because you mentioned they included things people don't even know about, a little bit of ritual, dark ritual as it was displayed in that performance.
Mm-hmm.
Most Americans, most people in Western culture have no idea what that is. You saw it right away. You went, that's ritual, symbols.
Because I have that knowledge of witchcraft as well, and also
because you're Satan.
Exactly. But also, like, Satanism is kind of unfair sometimes to paganism and Wiccan, because they are very different. Pagan and Wiccan.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Mister. They're very different. And it's like, they seem to have, like, obviously Pan, the horned god, obviously, Lucifer is what they use in the Bible, as in the favorite angel, light bringer, cast out of Morning Star, wasn't he? Cast out of heaven, and because he dared to question God's, view of mankind,
right.
And some might say he had a fair point, because mankind's not doing terribly well right now.
That's right.
To its fellow man, let's be honest, there are so many terrible things going on in the world right now. You actually look at it and go, there are a lot of good humans out there, but my God, there are a lot of terrible human beings doing terrible things out there. So some could question that he was like, we're supposed to agree with everything you say, but at the same time, to these people that are, obviously were built in, apparently, or made in God's image, right? So my point is that with the devil, Lucifer, Satan, or whatever, Beelzebub, or whatever you want to call him, is it over the years, has he morphed into something else that actually he's not? And is it useful to have a darkness, because you can't have one without the other? But there's no evidence of a God. As in, and I mean this sincerely, there's no evidence of a God, right? He's not come down with a big hand and gone, "Hey, how you doing, guys?" Right? I'm God, and we've not seen the devil. He's not, he's not come down and actually said, "Hi, I'm the devil." We don't know, but for some reason, it's been taken, like Christianity, like other religions has. It's been taken to people's hearts. They're drawn to it. They're attracted to it. They are seduced by it. And Satanism, when you look at it in a whole, is not a very, in my opinion, nice religion.
I wouldn't think so. There are certainly some people that we could talk to about this. Let's see. I just saw something I want to comment on. Mir Major says, although I would mention DeSantis is currently doing the exact same thing with the book bans from school libraries and removing AP African American Studies. Mir, you and I will have to talk about that, because I haven't seen him wanting to remove African Studies. I have seen him want to remove some of the things that are in the CRT. And so maybe I have a defining problem with that. I think he has no problem with real history. He has a problem with revised history.
The interesting thing that I want to say about the Grammys, it was sponsored by Pfizer.
Yes. And now, Satan Dancing, brought to you by Pfizer.
Exactly. And so they're actually putting all this out there for us to see. Yep. And it's not like, listen, I'm not against anyone that wants to go down that road, the light road, the dark road. You do
your choice, is what I say. Whatever.
I'm just putting it out there. Is just the fact that if young children, watch that, it is kind of like, first of all, it's quite difficult for the parents to go, well, actually, but also when you start looking at Valencia, using young children with those kind of images, it's that is wrong. That is, if they had a woman, seductive looking woman with a teddy bear in her arm, nobody would have, batted an eyelid to it, but they use children. And then there's other, everyone talks about, how deep it goes in Hollywood. Like they talk about, and I'm just bringing it up, I'm just going to use KB's word. I'm just saying.
Just say it. Say it.
Saying it. is he's probably smiling now because I said that. I can see him smiling on that. I'm just saying, like, they talk about people like Oprah Winfrey and Tom Hanks and other such celebrities,
Sure.
Jennifer Aniston. Are they involved with this? I don't know, but basically they talk about the drinking the blood of children.
Right. I have no clue if any of that's real. You don't know how much of this kind of stuff is just somebody sucked it out of their thumb somewhere and they're putting it out there. You don't know for sure. Becomes really silly after a while. That's why a lot of this stuff I don't get too worked up about. My only problem, well, back that up. I was watching Pierce Morgan over there, and he was talking about this performance by Sam Smith, and he had a very obviously flamboyant entertainer, whether he's gay or binary or whatever he is, I have no idea. But he was interviewing him, and also a woman who I thought was very common sense about her take on it, and I don't even know what to call him, and I'm not trying to be careful for political sake. Just the fellow.
I think
no
his
matter
name
how
was
he identifies.
Master, I thought something like that was.
Oh, Master. Yes.
Master. Yeah.
And Pierce said, "What would you like me to refer to you as?" And he used his stage name and Master, and he says, "Oh, you can just call me Master," and which he did respectfully, and but he was saying that something to the effect of, I think that this was an important performance because, and he made some good points from within his worldview. Yeah. One of people like us, for lack of a quicker way to say that, have always been looked down upon and so on. And now we're finally getting to the place where we can express what we want and so on and so on and so on. And he said, I think it's a very good thing that he sounded very articulate and very common sensed about it. And I could look at his points and go, you do have a point there. But there are certain things, you know what? I'm an adult male, and I'm only going here not to be shock value or anything, but to make a point. I'm an adult male. I love having sex with a woman. But you know what? I don't go out there preaching it. I'm not out there like, I need to go into kindergarten classes in first and second and third and fourth grade and let them know the wonders of an erect penis or the wonders of ejaculation or the wonders of naked women. I don't need to let little kids know that. So why is it that community thinks it's okay for them to do that? Because they house it in, well, there are kids who will struggle with this. And it's like, yeah, there's kids that struggle with a lot of different things. Let them figure that out either through their parents or as they get older. They're going to learn what they need to learn and be exposed to what they need to expose themselves to. So in a educational way. And so all of these things are things that I use these as maybe poor examples of saying that there are people out there that say, well, because we have been suppressed or oppressed or something, or we finally have the ability to come out and say our people, well, okay, more power to you there. But if you teach that to my kid, I will punch you in the throat, is kind of the idea. You don't need to teach it to my kids. You don't need to put it on public display. I think that there are certain things that you keep private for the sake of, I mean, look at the cutting edge we are already. I can say the word penis. You couldn't do that 20 years ago, maybe 30. You can't mention those things without there being a bit of stigma to it. Should that stigma all be taken away? No, not necessarily. I think it's good to be open about things. Is it good to teach certain things certain ways? Is it good to put things on display? If my religion calls for the slitting of a goat's throat and draining its blood onto the altar, like Islam has done, like Judaism has done centuries ago, sacrificing the lambs, it was all out in the open. The kids did it too. It wasn't a bloodbath. It was a ritual. It was a spiritual ritual. So can I, though, go ahead and start inculcating kids into sacrificing animals to make sure our crops grow? Is that something that should be shown on stage or made fun of on stage,
Mm.
mocked on stage? Um,
Well, I mean, look at Madonna in the
yes.
80s when she did "Like a Prayer"
Yep.
with the burning crosses,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think she had a black Jesus, and it was in your face. She's always been, and the thing is, it's good to push the boundaries in some ways. It is good to push the boundaries to a point. Because when it comes to children, they are innocent, and I believe they should have their innocence for, do you know what I mean? As long as you possibly
Yes.
have them, because it isn't long before they lose that innocence and they're out there in the big wide world and they actually get smacked in the face with just how tough and hard life really is.
Yes.
So I think that, I loved Madonna when she came up. I was very young. I was, in my teens when she first came out, and she was very, impressionable. She was just great. But now I look at her. Now I look at her in the recent spread she did for, I'm not sure what magazine it was, but she's dressed as the Holy Mary, and she's got a heart in her hand, and there's lots of, it just doesn't sit right. It's like, how far, Madonna, do you have to go before you actually start looking at you going,
You're a
yeah,
joke.
that ain't right anymore, love. And it's not
Yep.
suiting a woman of your age either, because, with all due respect, you might be rich and have loads of money, but at the same time, her credibility is not what it is now, especially when she's charging £250 for a ticket to go and see her. I mean, has she not heard that the rest of the world is, struggling? And this is a shame, because I always admired her. I didn't know much about Sam Smith. I knew he did a Bond theme. I know he's got a great voice, but it's almost like I feel he's been pushed, pushed. It's like, it's okay, let's take this as far as you can go. How far?
Now, how much is he pushing himself to do that?
Exactly.
I have, as I mentioned to you earlier today, I have a sneaky suspicion that he knows this is going to make him money.
Absolutely.
It's his shtick right now.
Yeah.
Because it's the thing that sells tickets. It's a thing that sells albums.
Yeah.
It's a thing that gets him controversy, which gets him PR, whether it's good or bad. So is this all to him? Does he sit home, in his loafers and his, and his khaki pants and a t-shirt and a baseball cap and go, whew, I hate doing this stuff, but I sure did make a lot of money last weekend. We don't know what he's really like deep down.
But
or maybe we do.
His last two videos, like, as I said, the one about I'm not here to make friends, and they are, I would ask people to go and watch it on YouTube and to actually have an open mind when you go and see it. Some of it's very tongue in cheek. Some of it's like, no, you went too far with that now.
Yep.
But now what happens is they keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing the boundary. When does it stop? When you go that over crossing the line? But satanic is sexy, sex sells. The satanic sells. You're onto a winner.
And I think, what I look at that as, and I go, well, where are our sources for describing who and what Satan is supposed to be? It's generally religion. It's generally biblical text. And those texts don't say awful. I'm sorry, this is still doing that. I think it's off. Biblical text kind of sets the stage for us on what a Satan is supposed to be, what Satan is, who he is, the Lord of Darkness. And even in the origin texts, they don't come across like the movies you see nowadays about Satan. They don't come across that way. And you have noticed too, I'll bet, movies in recent years and fiction and things like that, accounts of Satan and satanic activities go far beyond the veil of anything you ever saw in Scripture, in your religion or your Sunday school class. It gets taken further and further and further with the imagination. So the question is, should we not do those things? What is the line, Wendy? Where do we draw the line to say this is creative bent? This is doing something that I believe in, and you don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but I'm going to put it out there, versus what is a line we draw to say, now, neither you or I, and sorry if I'm putting you into the same boat with me here, but I don't think either you or I are moralists. We're not out there gauging and judging people on their morals. It's not my business.
No.
But is that what we're doing with this guy? Are we looking at what he does? The things that are represented in his performance? All the little subtleties that people don't see?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I loved his performance. I thought
the performance was incredible.
It was.
If you look at it from a creative point of view.
Writing, creative, but that's not really Sam Smith. That's not the Sam Smith we've come to know. He actually does more ballads, quite deep stuff. Lately, his music is going on a completely different level. But let's look at Elvis Presley when he first came out as well. People thought his music was, from the devil, and they burnt his records outside.
I know.
Record stores, and now he's the king of rock and roll. But he was the first person to come along and push those boundaries. A white guy that could move like a and sing like a black guy. And it was like you can't have that. So look at where we are now. We've come a long way, and these artists that come along, Madonna. And let's look at David Bowie in the Piers Morgan interview. They brought up David Bowie.
Yes.
David Bowie was very clever. He was very good master of disguise. He would change into different characters. I don't believe he went, he had his moments. Of course he did. He was well known to be his foot into quite a lot of puddles.
Oh, sure. I don't think he cared all that much.
He didn't. But I think even so, I think he also had a boundary as well where he was concerned. But the fact that Pfizer did support the Grammys, that in the song Valencia is mentioned, when it's got a really bad reputation right now for having pictures of young children with, bondage attire on, you start to think, well, hang on a minute, is that all right to use that line? Because actually what you're saying is, because over here, in this, if you remember it probably you do, in the 70s, DJs.
Is that an old slam?
It was an old day. I was in the 70s, honey. It's okay.
You were just a little kid.
We had a program over here called Top of the Pops. It was like literally music, and there was DJs, and you had people like David King Jensen, Simon Bates, and Jimmy Savile, and everybody has heard of Jimmy Savile. Who was well known to be a paedophile, and also Gary Glitter. Gary Glitter was a very famous singer in the 70s, fantastic performer, really good songs for the time, and he's just come out of prison for serving time for paedophilia. This doesn't end just in Hollywood. It is round the world. It is in the UK. It is in America, Canada, Germany. I still don't understand how in Germany you can go to certain places and pay to have sex with animals, and the animal's tied up. What kind of a human race are we becoming? What kind
that animal should be free to express itself while somebody's having sex with it.
Exactly. But you know what? They don't have a voice, and it's okay to do that. Isn't that morally wrong?
You'd think. But who gauges again? Is somebody like Sam Smith representative of the crowd that would say, I need to ease the world into this with what I've performed tonight? It's easing you into accepting what I believe is okay to do. And, do what thou wilt. That's his message of that song. Do what thou wilt.
If it came with, I remember when Madonna did Like a Virgin, and she actually performed it in, I think it was Vatican City, or it was around the area. And it was very, very, she actually stimulated orgasm and masturbation. And they went nuts over it. They went absolute nuts. And I think they banned her actually for a period of time. And she was actually raised as a Catholic.
Like, I'm sorry, Madonna, we like having you here, but you can't masturbate on stage, okay?
Get off. And it was like she pushed it, and obviously then she got involved with, is it Kabbalah, which in itself is another whole different, totally scenario. Thing, but it's in every country. So, yes, these artists should be allowed to be themselves and be creative. But when they start using certain things where young children have been, it's going into young children and stuff like that, there has to be a line that you cannot cross.
I believe that. I believe there are certain lines you don't cross. And we would inevitably be asked the inevitable question, who gets to decide what that line is? Because obviously performers like Sam Smith, who did what he did, believe that there are lines that he is allowed to cross.
Yeah.
And, or he thinks this is going to get me banned, but I'm doing it anyway. Well, look what it has done. It's done what we hate to see in serial killers, and that's putting their names out there so everybody knows who they are and glorifying their act.
I mean, it's all over the news here, like all the newspapers, right? Or all the internet.
For me, normally this kind of stuff, I would just move on from it. I don't care. The only reason I would bring it up is as an example of how far we've gone over the line to say. And then somebody else will come along. Have you realized, or you've noticed, I'm sure, as has everybody else, how our cultures have become society? Would it be society or culture? Probably both. Has gotten to the place where everything is okay. You can't criticize somebody unless they're politically to one end of the spectrum from you. Or they're religiously to the end of this. I find it very interesting. And anybody out there who wants to can disagree with me on this. Christianity has been equated to conservatism, right-wing conservatism in this country. What are the two things that get the most cancel culture wrapped around them? Conservatism and religious right. Those are the two things. Now, I'm conservative, but I'm not religious right. I've spoken out against the religious right because I disagree with stupid things they do. For instance, the religious right sponsored the DOMA Act. There was going to be a constitutional amendment to identify marriage as being only between one man and one woman. I said, even if I believed that, I would be against that. You know why? Because you're setting up our Constitution and government to declare what is right and wrong in a marriage.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be there for that reason. So there are things that we hold to and things that we believe that sometimes you stand up for the rights of somebody else because they have the freedom to do that. Because you don't want to be the next guy whose freedoms are lopped off. So does he have the freedom to, Sam Smith, to say what he wants, to write what he wants, to perform what he wants? Sure, as long as he's got an audience for it.
The truth is, he has got that right, and he will probably carry on as the other. I mean, Eminem talks about a lot in his music about worshiping Satan, and there's a lot of musical artists that we've all gone to concerts or we've been out where this sign is used quite a lot. People use it all the time.
Yep,
it's another sign for the devil. And now I'm in the middle because I was christened Church of England, but I am also a spiritualist, Wiccan, bit of pagan. I'm a bit of this, bit of that, and a bit of the other. And what I don't like is that obviously with this whole Satanism side, it gives witchcraft a very bad name because not all of us are out there worshipping Satan,
right?
Sacrificing children and animals or doing rituals. We're not. And people obviously then, when you say like I practice the craft, they kind of go, oh, like, really?
Well, paganism and Satanism are two totally different beasts.
Absolutely. And yet the pentagram, let's look at the pentagram, a completely different symbol, which is, you know, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. That's what it represents. And yet some people, you know, as soon as they see the pentagram, they think it's, oh, actually, you know, you're into Satanism. It's a very, very different. And one gentleman that I actually think one of these weeks we should actually look at is Aleister Crowley, because I think he's
a very interesting person.
Very interesting guy. And it's not just straightforward with him. But obviously, when you see Hollywood these days, and it's everywhere, you know, they've got a photograph and they might have something in front of their face like this, or they might just be like this. It's the one eye. And I've had photographs which I didn't even think about at the time, where I've got like hair over mine. I'm like, oh my God, I'm joining it. It's true. He was a sweetheart. Everybody loved him. But now we're like, what's happened to you, Sam?
Yeah. Yeah. What's going on, brother?
Especially with his last video, the one I keep talking about, which was, it's just released it. I'm not here to make friends. He wrote it because he joined a dating site. And he said what he found was, on a dating site, a lot of people don't want to date. They just want to be friends. And
everybody wants to bring someone home, he said in that song.
Absolutely, right? And that's why he wrote that song. But when you see the video, and he's wearing, like, he's carrying a bit of weight now, which fair enough, you know, he's carrying a bit of weight.
Sure.
But the outfits he wears, it's kind of like someone, I would have kind of said, Sam, probably not, that would have gone. But he's got like little nipple things here and a jockey.
His pasties.
And literally he's got, it looks like they're women, but they're actually men bent over in wigs. And then there's one scene where it looks like he's drinking water, or water going, but it's meaning something else,
emanating out of giant penises.
Exactly.
Yep.
But I do believe that, obviously, you know, I do believe in gay rights, and I do believe that they should be able to marry who they want, and I do believe that there are two species, man and woman, and it doesn't matter if you want to change that after you're born, and you feel like you're someone else. You have the right to do that. You were legally born a man, but if you want to change it, that's great. I don't care what you are. Everyone to their own. It really doesn't matter. But when we start looking at the Grammys, sponsored by Pfizer, you have to wonder, and obviously mentioning Balencia,
right?
You have to wonder how far someone didn't say, you know what? I don't think we should use that lyric, Sam, because that's just been in the news about paedophilia in children, and I don't think that's a really good thing. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. And it's like, it's okay to mention that there were young children of 4 and 5 with their legs.
Why was that okay?
I mean, if you look at these photographs, some of these children, they do not look happy in these photographs. They're not like going, here's my bear. You know, they just don't look happy at all. And it just makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Of course, that can also be by direction. Nobody knows. Maybe those children might not have had any idea what they were doing, but why is it being used in that context in the end product? Is it pushing an envelope, or is it pushing buttons? There are things, and can we at least, before we conclude this show today, come to a consensus on some kind of answer? It's like we're almost afraid nowadays to say, you know what, that's fucking wrong, and you're not going to do that. And, or, you know, you could use a not on my watch, not to be cliche, but as long as I'm a dad, there's certain things I will stand up for against my children being exposed to. Because I'm a dad, I'm their protector. That guy out there, and I'm going to use this example because it fits, the whole teachers bringing in drag dancers, drag singers to perform to kids in grade school. And thank you for playing. I would go in and disrupt that and probably be hauled off to jail. I wouldn't commit violence, but I would certainly disrupt it. I would pull my kid from that if my kid was involved in that. And I'd go to the school board and say, what the hell are you thinking? And you wouldn't be able to hold me back from doing that.
And that's the thing, is that children should have an innocence until they get
Yes.
of an age, a question of age, when they ask questions. And when they ask those questions, then you can fill it in. I find it interesting that this is our 13th episode.
Yeah, I did too today.
And it's called Unholy Hollywood. And I was like, and we know we've kind of incorporated a bit of Hollywood, a bit of Lucifer and Satan, and that is a subject I'd like to obviously look at further down the line, because there is a big difference between the two. Like, are they even the same person? Because at the end of the day, they've been labeled together, but that might not be actually true. And if Lucifer's only mentioned once, I believe, in the Bible, but Satan's mentioned a lot.
Yes.
And
yeah.
cool.
And even the thing with Satan, I mentioned this to you earlier today too, that the oldest chronological book in the Old Testament is the book of Job.
Yeah.
And we all know who Job is. We've got the old phrase, the patience of Job. I think it should be more the endurance of Job. Job was the guy who had everything taken away.
That's right.
And lost all his kids and everything. And
it was the most devout, wasn't it?
And it started at the beginning of that book with it saying, Satan entered the courts of heaven and accused Job before God. Now, the interesting thing is, in the Hebrew language, it's written, it had an article in front of the word Satan. The Satan entered the courts of heaven. Yeah. And what did Satan mean? The deceiver, the accuser.
The accuser, yeah.
And so it said the accuser went into the courts of heaven and accused Job in front of God. He'll curse you if you take things away from him. Sure, he blesses you now. That's because he's got everything.
But he's not called Lucifer. Like,
he's not called Lucifer. He's not called the devil.
Given his name.
Exactly. He was called the Satan.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a Satan in Judaism for a long, long period of time, thousands of years. And that's the earliest book. And he says, you take that all away from him, he'll curse you. And what does God do? He says, okay, I'll see your bet, and I'll raise it a little bit. You can do everything but take his very life, and I will bet you he will still bless me. And so the Satan leaves, and what does he do? He wreaks havoc on Job's life. Now, whether this was a real event or not, it's something that's in the Bible to talk about the grace of God, the character of God. Yet God was the one who allowed this to happen to Job in order to prove his point. And so let's take everything he has. Let's kill all his children. Let's burn everything he owns. He loses all his wealth. He loses all his health. All he's got left is sitting with a potsherd to scrape off the boils in front of a fire. And he said, and what did Job say? He said, though he slay me, yet will I praise his name. Now, that's the story of the story.
Yeah.
So who was Satan? Who was this guy?
But if God is so mighty, this is a question that I've had put to me. If God is so mighty, how come he can't smite Satan? How come he can't destroy him? Because he could, if he can. Could. But he chooses to let him have so much rain. That's what I read. He allows him to have so much lease, right?
Is this the whole, you need the darkness, you can't have the light without the darkness? So God says, I'll just let you have the dark for a while.
It's balance. It's balance, right? But the balance, and if you believe modern day, the God particle, which they're trying to find in Switzerland, a lot of people are actually saying that Lucifer, Satan, or whatever you want to call him, is actually in Switzerland, and it's well known. So if you dive
Satan
down,
lives in Switzerland.
Apparently, so he's not paying tax. Let's put it that way, right?
Yes, his address is. All my power goes out.
But it's interesting to say that if why wasn't he smited? He was allowed. If it's true, if all of this is true, he was allowed to do this. And where is hell? That's another question. Where is hell? Is it earth? Which I sometimes question, because let's be honest, hell on earth does actually appear quite a lot. How can God allow such terrible things to happen to his favorite, his favorite that he created? Some terrible things happen. So all these questions. And so I do think that there is a lot, although we look at Sam's thing and say it was too far, is there something we're not knowing?
And that's where we start to lapse from. We didn't really review this performance of Sam Smith's, but we were talking about it. That was the launch pad. And we'll start to get into theological debate or discussion about it. Try to figure out, well, why does God do this way? Why is it? And then you would have to say, well, who's God? Which God? Which God is the right God? Which is the God that rules everything? The one who declares it so by his prophets, or the one that this group says over here, the one that group says over there? This is the thing. I've always said, if hell is such a very real place where God sends those who do not accept him, why would God leave it up to the finite mind of a human being to make such an enormous, infinite decision with nothing to go on but a story in a book?
Well, to end this part of the show is my favorite line from The Devil's Advocate, when he says, "I'm down here with man and have been, and was it God says you can taste but not look but not touch, taste but not swallow." What's the whole line again? I'm trying to remember it. Is it look but not touch, touch but not taste, taste but not swallow? I'm a fan of man. That's a wonderful film, I have to be honest. Al Pacino is Satan for me.
Yeah. And I liked Viggo Mortensen when he played Lucifer in what was the one who was with Christopher Walken?
Yes.
One with the crows. I can't remember what it was. But some apocalyptic film. And that was many years ago. But I don't know. Who is Satan really? Is a big question. And people go, oh, you can't question it. I remember I had a Jehovah's Witness come to my door 25 years ago. And he would stop by every now and then. He was a cool guy. Just for getting a visual, he's a black guy, and he had a blue shirt on, not a white one, with his sleeves rolled up and a tie undone, and he had a modern hairstyle, and he was with it. And I don't know why he came to visit me, but he came a couple of times, and we got to talking. And it was back when I was starting to write the rudiments of some of my books where I deal with some of this information. And I said, what do you think of Satan? I said, what if Satan, and I said, I'm playing devil's advocate here, no pun intended. I said, what if Satan just got written about badly? I said, doesn't the definition of who the character was in the Garden of Eden says he was a prince of light, that he was a bringer of light, a bringer of illumination. He flipped the world upside down, meaning, which wasn't a negative term in the Hebrew. It was a term that meant he flipped things over. He made you think.
That's right.
And I said, and he was called Nakash in the Garden of Eden story in Genesis. And later in Exodus, when the children of Israel are after the Exodus and they're wandering in the wilderness, they're all complaining, and God sends vipers to bite them all, poisonous vipers, and they're all dying. And so Moses crafts a bronze serpent and puts it up on a pole and says, whoever comes and looks to this serpent will be healed of the viper bites. This is what God said to do. And the name for it was, now the serpent character in the garden was Nakash. The bronze serpent was the Nakashte, the bronze serpent that people had to look to, which has become part of our caduceus in the medical association nowadays. And so, and down through the ages. And so here was God saying, I'm going to send vipers to kill you all because you're blasphemers and you're complaining and backbiting. But here, now I'm going to have Moses build a idol, build a bronze serpent. And if you look to that serpent, you'll be healed. So God made the way to become dead. He also made the way of deliverance. He created both of them. And my whole thinking with this is that Nakash, who became the Nakashta, the symbol of healing, wasn't Nakash, did he get, and I asked this Jehovah's Witness this question. I said, did he get a bad rap? I said, did he get bad press? Did he get the prophets of God wrote him down, just like they did women in the Bible, just like they reduced the role of women in the Catholic Church by calling Mary Magdalene a prostitute, things like that. And he looks at me and he goes, did you just say what I think you said? And I said, yeah, I'm asking you a question. He said, man, you are lost. And I said, dude, I didn't say I believe that. I'm asking you what you think of that. Obviously, you answered me. And now he never came knocking after that one again. We got into deep discussions in the afternoon at my house. And so there's the question I lay out before everyone. Satan is painted as one thing.
Yeah.
Biblically. Is he another thing completely?
I mean, is there a Satan? Is there even a Satan? I mean, that's the question. And people, and it's the same with God. Like, you know, I'm open-minded. I think it's better to be open-minded than closed. And I think we only really know the answer when we're no longer here. But at the end of the day, they're trying to find the God particle. Why? Because they're trying to find out what brought everything to life, where it came from. I'm not sure I'm actually comfortable about them doing that, but hey, there you go. They're going to do it anyway.
Is Satan? Could Satan be replaced by Crowley? I'm making a supernatural reference.
Yeah.
Is he a being that could be replaced? So the big question is, and I don't want anybody to look at me askance and go, dude, you're lost, man. I'm not lost. I ask these questions because they go through my mind and I want to know. I want to know the answers to this. Many times the quintessential passage in the Old Testament that we relate to the fall of Lucifer is really the fall of the king of Tyre. But you know, I've heard that historically.
One of your guys here down here just mentioned Born Flippy. That's right.
That's Rick, good friend of mine.
Legend is a fantastic film. It was made in the 80s. Tom Cruise.
Legend. That was it.
Mia Silva.
Oh yeah. Tom Cruise, Mia, what's her name?
And he was like, it had a beautiful Tim Curry, beautiful version of a devil. You know, he was
a very mythological devil.
And he fell in love with a human. And then if you remember just watching Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage in it, was that the one? I think it was. And they had Peter, oh my God, my name.
I don't know.
The famous actor, I can't remember his name, but he played the devil in it. Peter, oh my God, he's gone now. Oh,
Peter O'Toole?
No, someone give me the name of him. Matthew, find out the name for me, please. The guy who played the devil in Ghost Rider and Nicolas Cage.
Oh, I never saw that movie.
He's sexy.
Frankly.
He's cool. The devil is like, you know.
Well, that's when I see red lights too. Red flags come up for me when the devil is made to look sexy.
Yeah.
He's sexy. The series Lucifer that was on.
The
devil is made to look sexy and slick.
Yeah.
But isn't he supposed to be the epitome of evil?
Exactly.
Does that mean he's filled with worms and horns and rotting flesh?
Yeah.
No, it said he was the most beautiful of all the beings God had ever created. And all he did was he got a little selfish, according to the Bible, and wanted to take over the throne of God. And God said, yeah, you want to see how far you'll get? Watch this. Oh, punt, you're out.
And where did the cloven hooves come into it? But I mean, recently, I have to be honest, I watched a series on
Henry Fonda, says Born Flippy.
It was actually Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda.
He did a wonderful job. Do you remember years ago there was Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Yes.
Well, it was comical back then with the little black cat Salem. Who
yep.
Did
a cartoon. It started as a cartoon
on Netflix, and they did.
That was a good series.
Completely different. The one on Netflix.
Completely different.
But my God, did they really keep to detail in there? Like some of the figures they use, some of the rituals and stuff like that. It was like, wow, there's really somebody on board here giving them, some things.
Yeah, somebody had some knowledge of stuff.
And they do. And it's like when you're actually saying this stuff on set.
Yeah.
And you wonder, like, the words they're using, are they just making that up? Is it Latin? Because I don't know all of Latin words. I know some of them, but I don't know all. But the devil is sexy. And as I said, when Al Pacino played him against Keanu Reeves, he made him cool. He made him sexy. But he also had a point. Where is God? Where is God in all this?
Where is God?
I'm down here.
I'm a sexy son of a bitch. You know, Al Pacino playing the devil.
So I can see why today artists use Satan, whatever, to have in their artistry, because it is such a big out there topic and people love it.
And even scripture says that Satan will appear as an angel of light, but he's the great deceiver.
Yeah.
And so, and my problem with some of these are things I've always accepted to be true by faith, in my faith. But where I drift away from that and start asking questions is because I ask questions about the Bible as a whole. I haven't thrown out the baby with the bathwater, as I'm so fond of saying, but I ask questions only because the Bible many times reads just as if you've just read about the Olympian gods in Greek mythology. It reads just like any other religion out there that has established its own gods that we don't know really anything about, other than the stories and the mythologies that we're told. When you have, we were always taught, for instance, that God is only one God.
Only one.
And yet, all through the Old Testament, you have God is used. They used over, I don't know how many names there were for God. There were hundreds of names for God used in the Old Testament, but the one used the most, 2,700 times, was Elohim. Elohim in the Hebrew simply means El, the name for God. Him, a suffix put on the end of a Hebrew word to denote plurality. Elohim simply means God of or among many gods. And this is what God called himself 2,700 times. Then you got the passage in Psalm 82 where it says, and Elohim, in the English it reads, and God stood in the midst of the gods. In Hebrew it reads, and Elohim stood in the midst of the Elohim. And he, singular, said to them, plural, you are all Elohim, the bright shining princes of heaven, which relates back to Nakash in Genesis. But then he goes to pass judgment on them for something they did they weren't supposed to do. So he had obvious superiority over them. Doesn't tell you what the case was. It's just the passage header, not edited in by the scribes. This was part of the original text as we received it, said that this is God before the divine council. So who's this divine council? God, who is known as Elohim, is calling them Elohim.
Yeah.
But the word had different connotations, singular, plural. And so you can get into a whole study of that.
And isn't it interesting that 666 seems to really get people worried a lot? I actually have that number plate on my car. I actually have 666 on my car.
I saw that.
And people were like, aren't you worried? And I was like, no, I'm not. And I actually knew someone years
I'm not Satan.
I knew someone who used 666 as the door code to get into the building. They used to change the code every week as a security measure. And one week they actually put 666 on. And there was people that were going, I can't press that. Yep. I actually can't press that. I can't. You got to let me in.
That to me is superstition. That's superstition.
The mark of the beast.
Yes. And what I was going to say about bringing all these things up about God, the names of God, the number of times used, is that even the Old Testament, while we can start listing out the names for God, it's very clear that Elohim in the earlier part of the Bible, Old Testament, is a different character than Yahweh. which Elohim and Yahweh. Yahweh was the base word for where we get Jehovah, Yahweh. And Yahweh was a different personage than Elohim. His function was different. And so the question is, were there two gods? Then you had the Shekinah in the Old Testament, where it says Moses, when they built the tabernacle, the tent version of the temple out in the wilderness when they were wandering, gathered all the people, and God's Shekinah came down out of heaven like a cloud and settled on the ark and dwelt there. Well, Shekinah is strictly in Hebrew, strictly genderically a female term. So the female presence of God came and settled on the ark, the Shekinah glory of God. And then there was God, there was Elohim, there was, if you'd go to basically to Elohim and Yahweh or Jehovah.
Do you remember some years ago, Michael Jackson did, he was on stage and he was singing, I believe it was it Earth Shock or Earth Song? I think it was Earth Song. And he portrayed himself like he was savior of the earth, like he was like God. And he had all white on, and there was the choir singing, and it was like all sort of like, you know, and people took really offense to it because they were like, oh my God, he's like, you know, he's been saying he's God and everything like that. Why is it that when they mention the devil, we react a certain way, but where is God portrayed? Like, you don't see them portraying sexy God or you know, make it more of their videos more sort of like that. I find that really strange. So when Michael Jackson did that video and he had the white light behind him and the singing choir voices and everything like that, people were just like, they were really horrible about it. And they were like, you know, you can't do that. You're not like the Messiah. You know, you're not the Messiah. So I do think you're right. One of them sells a lot more easier in some ways. I mean, you know, and maybe the other one needs to be rebooted to actually sell more easily. I don't know. But I do think that when we started this show, we called it Unholy Hollywood.
Unholy Hollywood.
And the fact is, when you look at Hollywood, they do make the satanic and the devil quite sexy in the movies. He seems to be the one they go for. And even in Supernatural, they make the guy who played Lucifer was fantastic, brilliant.
Which one was Lucifer? Oh yeah. I remember now because he came back and all that.
He was the blonde guy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then they had God was some guy with a beard. Chuck
yeah.
He was writing the whole story, and they didn't know that Chuck was God. And in the end, I mean, you know, I don't want to ruin anything for anyone, but in the end, Chuck sort of went a bit funny and a bit AWOL.
God was going to destroy his whole creation, and
he was, and
they had to beat him.
Lucifer sort of came in quite handy. So you do wonder, right? You can't have one without the other. But I do think the only thing I would say when we started this show was that Hollywood, I think, is quite dirty, quite demonic, and I think it's quite dark. And I think we don't even know how dark it goes.
I think you are absolutely right. And if I can mention something, just hailing back just a few minutes to where you were talking about Supernatural, there was a scene, and I've talked about this scene before. I've even played it on my show in the past. There was that scene. Do you remember? And folks, for those of you not into the lore of the show Supernatural, there was a character who was a writer, and he's God, they find out. And his name is Chuck. That's all they know. Chuck's writing. He's writing his story. And as superficially silly as all of that seemed on a theological level, they really dug pretty deep into the theology of God, of the angels, and so on. And there was a scene where God is in like an old tavern. There's nobody in there. It's quiet, beautiful. Love to have that tavern for my own.
Yeah.
And he's writing. He's sitting at a table and he's writing. And Metatron, do you remember Metatron, the angel?
Yes.
Played by a guy who's always played kind of goofy roles over the years. I don't remember his name. And he was like in Revenge of the Nerds back in
He was
the
in
80s and
Moonlighting
stuff
as
like
well.
that.
Moonlighting, yeah.
And but he was playing the angel. Was Metatron an archangel? But the angel Metatron, who was in a sense, the record keeper of God,
yes, he
as
was.
he's been defined. And he's talking to God, and God is writing his stuff, and he's kind of like, "Well, what do you think of this?" The leading action up to this, the two of them are alone in this pub, and he talks to God, and he says, I don't remember how they got into the conversation and what he said, but it was something about God turning his back on humanity, on people. He says, God, people have lost touch with who you are. You've turned your back on them. And God says, I didn't turn my back on them. They turned their back on me. And he starts giving and he says, and I no longer care about it. And so he's going to destroy humanity again. But he's busy writing his book right now. And so Metatron, I remember he says something to him like, he said, there was one point where he had asked God, why did you choose me? In an earlier scene. And God said, I chose you. You were the closest angel to the door on the way out. That's why I chose you to do what you do. And it really offended him. It really hurt him. But this angel is saying to him, and he's dressed, by the way, in an old army jacket and blue jeans, and they're not like in robes and things like that. And he's saying to God, he says, he was making his point, and he said something about, he says, I have loved you and I have defended you with everything I have.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why would you do that? And he says, because he says, you chose me. You chose me. He says, may have just been the dirtiest, dumbest angel in the back of the room as you passed out of the room. But you chose me. And he says, and I love you and I defend you. And all of this. And he says, and people love you too. He says, you can't turn your back on them. And it was a very, for a show like that has its own whole stack of camp that goes along with it, it had some writers that knew some stuff. And he acted this
very well written. Very well written. They went to a lot
of emotional scene.
When they brought Lucifer in as well, they brought in the story of why he did what he did. And he was like, I was like, God's favorite.
I was your favorite. Yeah.
And, and he was like, I saw what you were capable of. I saw, meaning men, humans, what you were capable of, what you would do to this world. And I was like, no, you can't do this. And obviously,
Curtis Armstrong.
That's it. But I think that what I'm saying is that it's not, is the devil, I mean, this is playing devil's advocate here. Is the devil, Satanism and the devil, is that incredibly different to Lucifer? Because Lucifer was an archangel, and the archangels are the big motherfuckers. They really are. They're the big ones. And Metatron wasn't I don't believe is he an archangel?
I don't think he was an archangel. He was just appointed by God. According to, now, where do we get all these names and stuff? It's usually Catholic tradition.
Yeah.
So that writes about these. So.
And obviously there's that new Lucifer show, which the English guy, was it Tom Ellis, was in? I watched that and I actually thought to myself, yeah, he's a great actor, but it didn't do anything for me. I hate to say this, but you had an English guy playing Lucifer. That's great, because obviously
Satan has to have an accent.
He has to be English, and the British are evil, so why not just make him British? That's the thing, right?
I think it was supposed to make him classier.
But the show was an absolute, in some ways, a big disappointment. I didn't feel.
I never watched it.
It didn't touch me.
It did something to me inside, because I came out of that theology. It did something. I'd see shows like that and I'd go, I'm not gonna. I can't even buy this. I cannot suspend my reality enough to even watch the fiction, because there's something more to this. And probably something more devastatingly real to this than what we're seeing here. And so I know Hollywood has tried to elevate the Satan character into more of a hero these
Yes.
days,
Yes.
because God's the one who started religious wars. He's the one who kills. He's the one who had fire and brimstone and so on. And Satan doesn't get blamed for any of that. So Satan's the underdog. He's the one who tried to overthrow God, obviously, because God was not the right person to be God. And so Satan tried to overthrow him. So he's the underdog. He's the one we should elevate.
And I think that's where sometimes religion is questioned about,
yes.
Is there a God? Who wrote this? Are they just characters in a book? Because nobody's seen him. Nobody was alive back then. No one's seen him, and no one's really seen the devil either. And I know people say, well, you've got these characters out there like, Gaddafi, and they even put Trump a lot on the same side of it. And it's like, because they're bad men, or they're seen as bad men or whatever. But I think real evil is in all of us, and it just takes something just to bring it out. I think we've all got the light and darkness inside us. We've all got good and bad in us. It's what brings out. Are some people born evil? Are some people, or do they just turn evil? That is the question I've asked for many, many years.
Some people have more of a propensity to enact upon evil. Yeah, I think that there are really odd people out there, and I think there are really evil people out there.
And sex in Satanism is seen as a very important ritual. It's like, the sex, and it goes beyond, sacrificing children and animals, and it's not pleasant, some of this stuff. It really, really isn't pleasant. It's very, very scary. If you make a pact to the devil, you can't break that one easily. If you're in a coven, or if you're in a cult, or whatever you want to say, if you make a pact with the devil, then it's seen as tight. And there's really only two ways out of that. It's either you pay your way out, or the other way is taken. And I think that's how serious it is. It is a religion of its own, whether we like it or not, that should be taken as seriously, because people believe in it very, very strongly.
But in that same religion, if you sell your soul to Satan, doesn't God have that ability to break that just like that?
You'd have thought so, wouldn't you?
According to theology.
His theology and his character and everything. And it's like, sometimes you wonder, when is God going to show his hand? Like, when I think we're all waiting for that big hand to be popped out the sky.
Sure.
And, it's you. But I don't know. So I think that when we see Hollywood, and obviously we hear the stories about what's going on behind those dark doors, the pedophilia, the sexual abuse, the rumors of sacrifice, and other such horrible stories. And Ricky Gervais said so much, in that when he did was it the Golden Globes, and he ripped them all apart.
Yes.
He really just threw it at them and said, well, what you're
doing. He's still alive.
And who you're working with, but it doesn't stop you from doing it, because, if what was it? His famous one was, oh my God, my brain is getting fried tonight. If the Taliban opened up their new channel, right, like Netflix, you'd all be sending your agents to work with them. And it's like they have sold their soul. They've got to look a certain way. They've got to act a certain way. Madonna looks beyond all recognition.
Horrible. She looked horrible.
She looked almost demonic, actually, in some ways.
Bad plastic surgery. Even it just goes to show you, somebody worth multiple hundreds of millions of dollars can still get a bad plastic surgeon.
Yeah, she was a very sexy woman. Very sexy
woman.
And
I'll bet she'd be sexier if she hadn't done a thing to herself.
Absolutely. I always admired her, because she always looked amazing. When she was married to Guy Ritchie, I think she looked fantastic with the longer hair. And she did just great videos. And I just thought she looked amazing. But I looked at her yesterday and I was like, what have you done? But unfortunately, I don't know whether people out there actually say to them, don't.
Yeah. Hey, Madonna, you look like shit. I mean, did anybody tell her that? Or does she know it? Does she look in the mirror and know it? She's got to.
But she also said if you get accused of controversy and being troublesome, you're onto something, and they know it sells. So that's why we did this tonight, because we wanted to say that behind every movie in Hollywood, I mean, let's be honest, like some of the movies that come out of Hollywood, and even Disney, let's go into some of the Disney films. If you look at some of the Disney films, there's a demonic meaning behind some of those movies.
Yes.
Very, very interesting. But at the same time, I got to give Sam Smith his due. He went out on that stage and,
Well, he did his thing. I give him his due. He's a creative chap. I think he crossed some lines.
Yeah, he did.
There are things you can do, even if you have the right to do them, you don't do them.
Yeah.
What pops into my head? Jeff Goldblum from the original Jurassic Park. Just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
And that's the big question. Gravity always wins, says Born Flippy. Stop chopping up your face. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, we've got an hour and a half, and on our hour-long show. So, folks, I think, Wendy, if you're all right with it, we're going to get out of here. It's 11:30 where you are.
You've got children to go and sort out.
I've got children to feed. And I told them they wouldn't see me for an hour and a half or so.
And they've been as good as gold. Wonderful.
That's right. That's right.
Be quiet.
So perfect. And, well, the music was a little loud earlier. I don't know if you saw when I muted my mic and I yelled upstairs because they're right up there. Music's too loud. So, Wendy, thank you. Amazing show. You're an amazing person. I love doing this with you because of what you bring to the table.
Right.
And I want you to stick around for a few minutes. Not here. I got to give you a call when we're done here.
Okay.
And so don't go toddling off to bed quite yet, even though it's late.
Okay.
Give me a couple minutes. Folks, we want to thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of our lives, for being part of this program. And, we'll be back again next Tuesday. And maybe some points in between, too. If you watch closely, we might just slip in and surprise you someday. So all of you, thanks for being here. We will see you next time, and live long and prosper.